Okay, so for this, I will be representing the venture capitalist, and Maunil will be representing the founder. Uh, Without any delay, why don't we just get into it? So, in negotiating this term sheet, from the venture capitalist point of view, there are a couple things to call out. In determining what we feel is our equity percentage, there are a few things to highlight. First and foremost, it's easily accepted that the cost, this is the right product. It's 10 times safer than anything available. It costs 10 to 20 times, and it's far less expensive to produce than anything currently, it would compete with. It's got a good team. There are a couple of cons that we see, not cons per se, but really just major call-outs. The first and probably the largest one is from a risk point of view. It only takes one mistake in a sector like this. It only takes one mistake to totally destroy the value of the company. And so, regardless of how good the team is, human error, one mistake, and this just evaporates. And so we see this as where it has the potential to be huge and wonderful. We do have to account for that in our estimation of what risk looks like in this particular instance. The second thing is in the event that anything does happen, and that includes other competitors coming into the space and disrupting our efforts, or losing key team members. Are we going to be doing this the whole time? I guess we'll negotiate in the dark. There we go. Coupled with those things, and it basically just tells us that this is, whereas the reward here is high, the risk here is very high. And so for that, we believe that a fair starting point in this negotiation is for 85% of the equity for $100 million invested. What are your thoughts?
How much are you valuing the company at when you take the 85% for $100 million?
I don't know how to do that. Not off the top of my head anyhow. Oh, Jesus. Somebody's going to watch this.
So you're valuing the company at $117 million. That is way off than what we value the company at.
What do you value it at?
So we feel that a fair valuation would be $300 million.
Okay. Just so we can put it in terms of a percentage of ownership, because the stake being held is 100 million. What does that back out to as a percentage?
What do you mean?
What does that 300 million?
33, 1/3.
So that's 33% ownership.
Yeah.
That's not going to be tenable. And I can almost tell you, and I'll just tell you flat out, for that kind of risk, I can't take this to anybody who I work with and get that approved. For something like this specifically, that figure that's a hard no. I mean, if there are other things that we can go ahead and address later on in the conversation to mitigate that to a degree, I know for a fact that we will be capable down the road to invest more in the company at the same time and bump that valuation up, but not during this round. It's the largest ever investment that Aerospace Capital has made or will make to date. We just don't have it in this round for that.
Because we've raised $23 million before.
With family and friends, yep.
Yeah, but it's not a small amount, $23 million.
Nope.
And we feel that you will be able to make back your money in in 5 years. Yeah, we believe that you can easily make back the money in 5 years. The concept has been tested, prototype has been developed. We've had 15 launches successful. I think we only need the money to start
to scale up to 6 more ships.
To open it to the general people. Something that we're already doing. We started selling tickets, and it's going pretty well. Also, we're not willing to part away with 85% of our company.
Okay.
That literally, it means we're basically giving it out.
And so for that, how do we feel? Let's see here, because this is not the only negotiating point. I can tell you this flat out. Anything less, and just because there are other points to be considered here, anything less than 60% is just off the table. That's hard. I can't do anything about it, and so we need to figure out what the valuation off of that looks like. So 60%, and don't get me wrong, we can get to favorable things later down the road here.
Okay.
But I can't do this for less than 60. And so if we want to tentatively have an agreement moving forward, we have to benchmark it at 60. Look at the rest of these things here, and then go back to the 60.
I don't think it's going to work with 60%. That's for sure. We're not willing to give up a majority stake or anything close to 60.
Okay, so let's see here. No majority. Okay. All right. So why don't we bench that for the moment, just for the sake of going through the exercise? Okay.
So you mean set it aside?
Set it aside.
Okay.
Set it aside because we're not getting any traction, and unless these other things work out, then we really are going to reach no deal.
But then again, you already mentioned that anything less than 60 is no deal, straight off.
So is that going to entail? Is that going to include all of these other things as well?
What do you mean?
So without that one, does the rest of this go to no deal?
Yeah.
From your perspective?
It's a no deal in general.
Right.
Because we're anyways not looking to let go of so much equity.
Okay. And just for the sake of this argument, and when does that become? You said 50. Is that a generic number?
Sorry, what?
You said 50%?
No, I said we're not willing to give up majority stake.
Right, 50%.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so it would not matter. Wow, this is going to be frustrating.
I don't know.
So regardless of what we do moving forward, then the 60% number, that's just not going to work.
Yeah, 60%.
Even if there are common shares, no dividend, any of that, anti-dilution, it doesn't matter.
No.
Okay. Well, fuck, man. I think we're done. How did they set us up for this? Because, I literally have marching orders in here. And this whole exercise is supposed to be about
45 minutes long.
Right. So, what do we do?
You're not willing to consider 49%? Like, that's the highest I can go.
Without breaking the rules of this thing, I don't think I can. Let me go back to where that was originally. No, I mean in reality, based on that, we should be looking at. I mean, 67 is the benchmark I'm getting for $150 million valuation, and then going below that threshold. Yeah. I mean, this is substantial risk. It's right in here. It's too high of a substantial risk for one error to go ahead. It doesn't matter how many people you have that are that have invested. It doesn't matter how many sales that you've accumulated in the short term. It's a substantial risk. They can't do that. This money's not there for that, and it won't get passed. I mean, it's right here. Fair compensation, substantial risk involved in venture.
That's a fair compensation. Like even we've been given a fair compensation of $300 million valuation.
I hate being. Okay. Am I in it though? Okay. I guess kind of. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that is the fair valuation, but you have to come to a middle ground somehow. Both the parties think they have a fair number in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we can come to something in the middle, we can work it out.
I would have to go off script for this. Just flat out. No. I mean, it's going to be on, but like, it's not in my. It's not in the scope of this thing. So with that said, let's move someplace else in this, because right now that's just not going to do as is, and it doesn't go ahead and allow us to discuss any of these other points. One thing that immediately comes to concern when we start having that conversation about mitigating against the risk that we're taking on has a lot to do with the founder, has a lot to do with you, and having you on board for a significant amount of time. So that means like the vesting of the founder shares, right?
Okay.
Now we don't see this being a successful venture if you leave any time under 5 years.
Okay.
We just don't see that happening for the sole fact that it'll fall apart. You're too crucial to the endeavor. Okay. And that's when we can start having this conversation about risk reduction. You are a focal point of this. Are there any conflicts within that, or can we just say that would be something that we would agree on?
So the founder technically has started the company, has been through the whole process of building it up.
Yep.
So he's attached to it. He's not a serial entrepreneur. So
that's you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm not a serial entrepreneur. So I haven't moved across. I very well plan on sticking to the company. If vesting gives you peace of mind.
Vesting? Yeah.
If it gives you a peace of mind that.
Well, you can see how we correlate the two, right?
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you feel that the founder is instrumental in growing this company.
Yep.
So.
Not just growing, keeping us out of that that one event issue.
Sure. The way I can see it is, I can go to a maximum of 3 years for vesting. 3 years or less, whatever suits you.
3 years or less?
Yeah, less. For 3 years.
In order to receive your full interest or your full equity position off of this to get a return, that's outrageous. It's going to take at least 5 to 8 years to get the money back out of this from a VC's point of view, right?
Okay.
It's going to take 5 to 8 years to do that, and so we're not even covering. You're leaving me upstream halfway through the process.
Sure. So I've been told that if you invest the $100 million, you will get the return in 5 years.
Okay, but why do you want to get out in 3 if we don't get our money back?
Just for your peace of mind, I'm willing to go to 5 years of vesting. And in those 5 years, you will get back your money, as is said in the case.
Okay.
And
so we're sitting on 5.
Yeah.
All right. I'm comfortable having a conversation further if we're starting at that point, because otherwise I don't have anything here. Okay. Nothing I can even work off of. Now.
You okay with 5 years vesting?
I'm all right with 5 years vesting. Yeah. Now what happens? Now we need to talk about not hitting projections. Now forget it. We'll just leave it as is. What happens now? How are we going to go about in the event that we've agreed upon terms for what needs to be accomplished? Right. All of these VC deals have benchmarks tied to them. Must hit this to get remaining amount of cash. Must hit this. Blah blah blah. Etc. Etc. So what happens in the event that, to put it bluntly, that performance isn't being had, and we're not going to, either party is not going to realize the benefit from the partnership?
Sure. Firstly, I would like to know if you're in this for the short term or the long term.
We're in this for the long term, which is why we're having this conversation. That's we're on the same page about that. So if you're in it for long term efforts, that's exactly what we're doing as well.
Got it.
Which is why it's felt like a slap in the face when you said 3.
Sure. You've received our projections. Like do you know what levels of projections we have?
Yeah, we did receive that in our case. Where is it?
I'll tell you, they must be aggressive, moderate, and conservative.
Sure. And so where are you sitting on those?
We would
again. We have to think about this as maintaining a relationship for now and for the future.
Yeah.
So let's try to be realistic. You and I are not unreasonable people.
Yeah. We are at conservative projections. We can hit those. If we don't hit those, then you can use a CEO. No, you can go looking for a new CEO. But honestly, when you put the sword of projections on our head, it becomes difficult for us to function. But we also are mindful of your expectations, so we will hit the conservative projections.
We're trying to. We're okay. So you're saying conservative projections.
Yeah.
So for that though, I mean, we could have that conversation, but for that though, we need to, for that concession on my part, because honestly, given the nature of this business, I mean, we're talking about aerospace tourism, for Christ's sake.
Okay.
Which is totally unknown by most. We would need to say, how does that even happen? We would need to say in the board for that. We would need presence in the board.
Sure.
And that involves where was it? That's 3 seats
That's 50%.
of the board, not of the equity stake.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, honestly, because I'm nervous right now, I would be asking for 4. With that said, this is a partnership. This is not short term. we are doing this together, and there is no intention of muscling the other person in the operations of the business. It's just we're in this. We're putting up a shit ton of cash right now, and the only way I can feel comfortable doing this, in consideration that we're only trying to hit conservative projections, is to have my equal say in the, to protect our interest. I'm not asking for more, but I certainly won't feel comfortable taking less.
I don't think we can do 3 members. No.
No?
Because we can't do, even
And
if
why
it
is
is
that?
individual 3 members, we can't do individually, let alone being connected to another section.
All right, that's fine, but in that event that we do go down that route, I feel less secure, and for that, I'm gonna have to ask for, preferable dividends, preferable, a type of stock, and ultimately back up to that equity percentage. So if you want to ever get that number down from the VC equity percentage, we need more, risk mitigating activities in some of the topics we're already discussing. Do you understand my point of view on that?
Sure.
I mean, you either, often I feel in these deals, you either get the operational control to its hilt, or you get to maintain, full sets of equity, or, your preferences when it comes to some of those earlier items.
Okay.
So I mean, that's kind of where we're going, and so maybe it's best to look at this thing in its totality, almost as like, here's a concession, back and forth in that sort of way.
Okay.
So for that, if we're talking 2 members, and I'm not gonna, I would need to take 2 members, but for that, I think that's easily worth redeemable preferred stock type. I mean, we can get back to that equity thing, and we can call that the last thing we discuss, but we got to be able to get some cash out, specifically if we're going off of conservative projections. There needs to be some give in one way or the other. I'm giving you control of your board. That's huge. Correct?
Let's say you get the redeemable preferred shares.
Mm-hmm.
That would put you in a good mind frame, right?
It would make me feel better than what we're currently sitting in. Because right now, the only thing we've locked down is 5 years and that's so we can just have a conversation.
Yeah. So you would say that getting the type of stock is pretty important to you, redeemable preferred shares, where you can exit also, and you can also keep your investment.
Correct. Yep.
So I'm willing to offer you the redeemable preferred shares.
For the 2 members?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No. 1 second.
Okay.
In exchange for a conservative projection on the CEO replacement provision, along with 2 members on the board.
So tentatively, and I'm just going to put this, we're going to have to make sure this all makes sense at the end, but tentatively I'll agree to that.
Sure. So the stock is redeemable preferred.
2 members to the board.
2 members on the board.
5 years vesting of founder shares. Conservative projections on the CEO replacement provision. Honestly, we don't want you out anyhow, and we understand that if there's a stumbling block, which there is inevitable to be in any startup venture.
Would you be willing to consider no provisions on the CEO replacement? Like if you were to...
Definitely not. Sorry. That's not even to be discussed.
Okay.
There's no way.
Sure.
There's no way.
Let's move on to dividends.
Dividends.
Do you have them in percentage?
Yes.
We're willing to offer you 4% dividends. And also, in term in case of anti dilution rights, we're also willing to offer you the right of first refusal.
So you're saying that I'm sorry, what was the dividend?
4.
4? For 4 to 7, you'd be willing to give me VC right of first refusal.
Yeah, for 4%.
Right. For 4%. I'll entertain that if you also include the provision, no shop. If we're doing business together and we're going to go in this for 5+ years potentially, if we start doing business after this, I don't want to be looking over my shoulder to see that you're shopping the deal. If that's the case, I can accept it. That's not really good business. It's one of the only things in these venture capital sheets that I actually agree with on a typical basis. We're either doing business or we aren't, right? I mean, we're coming to the final. We're coming to the finish line if we do this. Then the only thing left to discuss is the VC equity percentage. And then to look at this thing as its entirety. What? What do you think I care? Give me a break.
Sure, let's do it. So, dividends is at 4%.
Yep. Dividends
So,
at 4,
done.
VC right of first refusal, provision included for the no shop. Which gives us a total of, as we stand, redeemable preferred for the stock type, 4 to 7% on the dividend, anti-dilution right, first right of refusal included, 2 members on the board, vesting of founders share 5 years, CEO replacement provision at a conservative projection, and a no shop provision included. Which leaves us with the granddaddy, VC equity percentage. So in looking at this, let's see here, let me review this. I mean, we're coming down to it here. We've in my personal opinion, out of the 7 things we've discussed so far, 4 of which are in your favor, 3 of which are in mine, as far as from our point of view. And to be honest, this still bothers me as one thing is that board seat stuff, as it would relate back to the equity percentage. I'm looking at this thing and I'm thinking to myself, best case, average, and worst case scenario. In a best case, everybody walks away from this so far saying that things are going to work. But in an average case, or even, by extension, a worst case, we have no real way to affect change outside of voicing our couple opinions and having a loose way to manage whether or not the venture ultimately succeeds with you at the helm. You're not presenting me with any way to show that we've got a say in $100 million to any significant measure, and so for that, I honestly don't see, based on these things, I don't see us going below 60-65% on this deal. I just don't. I don't see that happening. I don't think it's fair. Unless we start tweaking some of these other things. I mean, it's nice that we got to go through this whole exercise, but at the end of the day, that 60 to 65% range, and we can talk about anything within that, but I just can't. I mean, it's too risky. And I can't believe I'm saying that, because I usually am taking the position of the founder. But if I'm thinking about shelling out $100 million and I don't have any control over it outside of what's being presented, it looks like this is a money transaction and not, you're allowing us to actually be equity partners in this. I mean, the things that we're bringing to the table here are substantial, top management, industry insights, access to the industry professional network, finding a buyer for an IPO. I mean, we're going to be putting the time, the effort, our resources, our connections, for what? So that you can give us a handout? I mean, I know that's extreme language, but to a degree, it kind of feels that way. I mean, you're going to have control over your operation. It's going to go exactly how you want. And for that, and for what we're bringing to the table, that's not unreasonable. That's not unreasonable. It puts you near a $200 million valuation. You know that you're going to have us in the next round to recapitalize this if we don't get to an IPO before that. I've got that right here. Largest ever investment. We're showing you that we are all in on this. We've never done this for another company. That's in here. I can cite that. I mean, and I'll just tell you flatly, the lowest we're going to go is 60 for something like this, in consideration of the other points that we've covered. If that's not something that we can do, maybe take a second to think about it. But I mean, don't think too long. What time is it? Yeah, we're gonna. And
Yeah, 1 hour.
3 o'clock. Gotta be back, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
2 o'clock.
So we got 20 minutes.
Oh, the clock is not working.
No.
Okay.
I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, we're going to be throwing a lot of effort into this and a lot of money, the biggest one we've ever done. And I just don't see this deal getting done underneath that. So that's my final.
We can go up to 50, but it'll make us equal partners.
Can't do it. Can't do it. Sorry.
Okay. Last one, 55.
60 is the number.
Can't do it.
Okay. All right. That concludes the negotiation. Thank you. Have a nice day.